You're listening to Conversations on Careers and Professional Life. I'm your host, Gregory Heller, from the MBA Career Management Office at the Foster School of Business at the University of Washington. This season, I'll be joined by co-host Jonathan Azoff, the co-founder and general partner of Snowcap, a venture capital firm investing in deep tech climate solutions in our global supply chains, for a series we're calling Conversations on Careers in Climate Tech. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thanks, Gregory. Over the course of this season, we'll talk to entrepreneurs across climate tech and sustainability about their careers and the career opportunities for job seekers looking to impact one of the greatest challenges facing humanity. We'll break each conversation into 2 episodes, the first focusing on our guest's business, how it came to be, who their customers are, and what kind of impact they hope to have.
And the second will focus on the advice our guest has for job seekers looking to make a pivot into this space. This season is made possible with funding from Snowcap. You can learn more about their fund and portfolio of investments at snocap.vc. In this second part of our interview with Scott Case, co-founder and CEO of Recurrent, a Seattle-based startup that's addressing a key challenge in the used electric vehicle market, we shift gears to discuss Scott's career journey and the lessons he's learned along the way.
That's right, Gregory. Scott shares some insights about his experience working for a company that was acquired by Microsoft, as well as the early days of starting his previous venture, EnergySavvy.
And he also offers advice for those looking to enter the clean technology or energy revolution space. Whether you're a recent grad, a current student, or someone interested in working at a startup, Scott's perspective is sure to be helpful.
I'm interested in hearing more about what Scott looks for when he's hiring. As someone who's been on both sides of the table, I know how crucial it is to find the right fit for these fast-paced, mission-driven companies.
Definitely. Let's jump back in with part 2 of our conversation on careers in climate tech with Scott Case. I want to shift to some questions that are actually about your career and for people who are looking to get into the clean technology space or the electrification, the energy revolution space. So I mentioned at the top, you got your MBA from MIT Sloan. You worked at Microsoft for a couple of years. You started a company, and now you've started Recurrent. What are some of the lessons that you've learned over this time just about career that you wish you had known when you were applying for those jobs just coming out of the MBA?
So first, to correct the record, after my MBA, I went to work for an ad tech company called Aquantive, which was a Seattle, actually a pretty big deal Seattle startup at the time, and we were acquired by Microsoft in 2007. So I didn't go to work for Microsoft. Okay. One time in my career, I did go to work for Microsoft as a contractor in the .com bust, and I couldn't get any other job, and I did it for 6 months before I went to business school.
So you were acquired into Microsoft.
I was acquired into Microsoft. I think that's an important point. And actually, hilariously, now I can say this because it's on the record, because the statute of limitations surely has passed. My last 6 months at Microsoft, I was on leave of absence, basically helping start EnergySavvy. Microsoft was paying my healthcare. I wasn't getting a salary. I also wasn't getting a salary from EnergySavvy because we had no money. But that was actually a great way for me to take a careful foot out of the door of big tech, knowing I can go back. If this all turns out to be a bust, I'll just finish my leave and I'll go back. But it just felt like there was a little bit of safety there. And I think that's, I think it's like maybe a generalizable career lesson is in that regard is like, I think when you have not much to lose, you're more likely to go and do those startups. When you have like, I got a sweet, pretty cushy job and I'm making some nice coin and maybe also I've increased my lifestyle level to suck up that extra coin, like, boy, that's going to be a lot harder to sort of like get out there and start something from nothing. It's scarier.
So that sounds like a good lesson. And for someone who is really looking, is maybe sitting in the last quarter or semester in college or in their MBA program and is thinking, they're looking around, they're looking at, the COP, and they're looking at what's happening in the environment and they're like, I can't justify going to work for some big company that's not actively trying to solve this problem. What advice do you have for people like that who might be thinking, I want to tackle this problem head on right out of school?
I think whether this is a climate focused person or, a college grad, MBA grad that is just thinking about their first job in general, I this may be a downer, but I don't think you should go straight out of either of those things and start a company, because I just don't think you know what you're doing. So what I would say to someone in that situation is go work for, big co that's doing something in the industry that you think you want to work to decarbonize, so that you can see you can learn about the process and learn about maybe what's going wrong, and maybe you can tip that that huge ship a couple of degrees in the right direction. But mostly you're basically like you're getting smart on their dime, and then you figure out, okay, what are the really high leverage ways to not just move the ship a little bit but disrupt the ship so it's really going in a 90-degree angle differently. And you have the network, you maybe have your first customer, or your first customers, because you have those relationships in with the Walmart or the Microsoft or the whatever the big company is. So then your startup is the second thing you do after 3 or 4 years of working for the man.
And for folks who are like, I just don't want to work for a big company. I want to work for a startup. You've hired a lot of people. I mean, you hired me, right?
Therefore, I'd hire anybody.
Yeah, right. It's at a low bar. I mean, I think I was number 25, and when I left, there were
you were
50.
Pretty early.
So there were 25 people who came in the door after me before I left in that year or so, and many more after that. What are some of the things that you're looking for in people who apply, and advice that you might give to someone who's like, I really want to work at a startup because I want that smaller team. I want to see that company double in size while I'm there. I want to feel like I am an integral part of making big things happen at the company.
Yeah, well, this is where it gets really hard with the advice I just gave versus what I've always found fulfillment in my career. My first job out of college was a 50 to 75 person software company in Boston that just sort of like really lucked into, kind of thing. So it was a small company. It wasn't like a high growth startup, but it was a small company, and it hit what you just said. Like, I knew that I was making a big impact even right out of school by being there. It didn't need to be, double the company over and over, in a year to feel that way. And so that's always been the fulfilling thing for me, is knowing that it matters if I don't show up to work tomorrow, or if I leave, like, big things fall apart. And that just for whatever reason, that's like what really motivates me. So what do I say to that person? Like, I don't know, maybe find that small company that is not necessarily a venture-funded rocket ship, or don't start it yourself, when you have no freaking idea what you're doing. You don't have the network of investors and customers and partners that can help you make the startup 1,000 times easier than if you are just like bumbling your way through it, like I did the first time. So yeah, maybe that's a sort of a version of it. I guess now thinking about the kinds of people that we hired at EnergySavvy and the kinds of people we've hired at Recurrent so far, I think that what's common in both those companies, and this isn't every company, this is like the kind of the culture that I like and try and create, is people who are they're not too wedded to one particular job. They're willing to take on whatever, because things change so much in a startup that in a small company in general, that it's a plus if you're like, I really love to do a little bit of this, and then I want to do this, and I want to learn over here. Like, you worked, I think, with the epitome of this for me. You worked with Ann Martins, right, at EnergySavvy. Mm-hmm. Ann Martins is like the absolute epitome of that. Like, she grew her role from like 20 times over the course of probably 5 or 6 years. And towards the end was like running really big parts of the company, and started from like a picking up the phones kind of person. So I look for people like that above almost everything else. And shout out to you if you're listening.
Hopefully. I ran into her it was a couple of years back when I was at Starbucks headquarters with a student group.
And she was, talk about like taking a big company and tipping it a few degrees to the left. That's what she did after EnergySavvy, was basically like went and built this whole thing within Starbucks on sustainability, essentially reducing food waste from their stores. Like massive opportunity. If you can make it 5% better, you've made a huge difference.
Yeah.
And that was what she did there.
So I have one last question that I always ask all the guests. Are there any books, podcasts, websites, newsletters that you pay a lot of attention to that have influenced you in the way you've managed your own career or the way you've grown your businesses?
Conversations on careers. It's kidding. You guys are great. I would say besides yours, I would say two others. One is the Acquired podcast, Ben Gilbert out of Pioneer Square Labs. That is so good for like understanding like just the early days of companies and startup companies in so many different industries. And actually the episodes I like the most there are like the ones they do on well-established companies, where they go back to like the New York Times, like goes back to like 1850s, and they talk about the founding days of the New York Times. And so I like those even more. And then the other one is very industry specific, so I don't even know that it qualifies here. But if anybody's interested in doing any kind of startup in the auto industry, the podcast is called Car Dealership Guy. It is like listening to it. He basically interviews all these people all over the auto industry, and not much on EVs, frankly, because it's a 1% case. But he gets people to talk. It's like you get a chance to be in the backroom meetings that you need to build the vocabulary, and you need to build the like familiarity with the jargon and the way people talk to each other. And it's like you're in those conversations. And there are probably other industries that have those, but I think that I would look for things like that, depending on the industry you want to go into.
That's a great piece of advice. We always say, you need to speak the language of the company that you're going to work for or the industry that you're going to work in. So finding that niche podcast that lets you be on a fly on the wall in those conversations is a great way to acclimate yourself to that.
That's what it feels like with this one for the auto industry, for sure.
Jonathan, you got any final questions?
Yeah. So just in the spirit, of closing out and leaving listeners with something that they can think about. Obviously, you're in a hiring position. Granted, you hire what you need for your business at the time you need it. But I think something any hiring manager can appreciate is the market bears what the market bears. And sometimes it may be hard to find the person you need, whether that's a type of experience, a skill, a cultural fit. How has your search been for growing out your team? And what are some skills or sort of focuses that you'd like to see, apply to your business as it pertains to folks who maybe are listening to this very podcast?
We are at 22 people right now. We just raised this pretty big Series A, and by the end of the year, we're going to be at 25 people. Like, we are being careful with our money because we need this market to develop a bit, and so it's pretty tactical advice for the three people that we need. So I'm not sure it's like appropriate for like the general listener beyond like, hey, like the one salesperson I need to hire, like I need this specific set of industry relationships and this approach to entrepreneurial selling and that kind of thing. So it's like, it's so specific.
I understand. I guess it's maybe more morbid curiosity on my side. Like if you really are hiring so few roles, that makes it even more interesting, at least to me personally. Like, what are these gilded roles that you look to hire during a time when you're not sure about the market or you'd like to see the market develop?
Well, we're sure about the market. We know that the market is taking some time.
Okay.
And we raise that money, and we're sort of like we're making sure that we have an extra long runway with it, essentially. So the gilded roles. We have one B2B salesperson that we are hiring right away. We have an engineering leadership role that we're going to be posting pretty soon. And then probably later in the year, maybe mid-year, will be probably one of those actually, Ann Martin style roles where like the one entry level kind of customer success type thing. I mean, Gregory at EnergySavvy, we called them, what was your group called? I forget.
Client services.
Client services. Yeah, it was just like, but we bring people in at that sort of basic level, and then the sky's the limit. We like work with each person. Like the ideal person is hungry for more, and we give them more, and then eventually they work themselves out of that job, and they work themselves into the next role, and then we backfill them. We did that for 10 years at EnergySavvy, and we're already doing that here. So
awesome.
I think that
we've got one of those.
Yeah, thanks for humoring the question. It's just always interesting.
And I think that maybe the abstraction of that advice is that if you're applying to a small early stage startup, you need to really understand your fit with the industry and the role. Like it's very specialized, and you have to be a discerning applicant, because if you just spray and pray applying to a lot of different jobs, there's a very good likelihood that you do not have the right fit for each of them. And a lot of that time is essentially going to be wasted.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Client engagement was what we called it, by the way.
Oh, it was client engagement. Okay.
Client engagement, yeah.
It was a long time ago.
It was a minute, yeah. What I think you're right, but there's two things going on here. One is there's like, we are looking for the person that is, has demonstrated that they can sell a data or tech product to automakers and captive finance companies. Like if you've done that, it'll be clear, right? Like you can't just make that up on the resume. Oh, I'm going to emphasize this part of my resume. Come on, it's like so specialized. But there is the other sort of like the occasional time when we do, hey, we're going to bring somebody in, with sort of 3 to 5 years experience, and like it's their second job. And that's more, I'm trying to think of the people that how we sort of pull those people out. I think it's in their engagement with the recruiting process. I've tried to rely a lot less at Recurrent on employee referrals, because I think you end up fishing from the same pond. You end up getting 5 people that sort of like think alike and work together or whatever, and so that you're not getting a lot of diversity in your company. And I think that is really important to do. And so I think we're sort of casting a much broader net now. But it's like when someone comes in and you can tell that they have thought through all the companies in the space, they've picked this space, and they pick you, you as a company. They're like, you're going to win, and here's why, and here's what I think I can do to make that better. People, and I can think of like 3 people offhand, 2 at EnergySavvy and 1 here, who made it impossible for me to not hire them for something. And it wasn't that they were like annoyingly persistent. It was just that every interaction that I had with them, it was so clear that they had just done their work, and this was it. It's unfortunately, it's not very tangible advice, because it's like, I know it when I see it, but I can't like coach somebody into doing it. It has to come out of a genuine, like, this is the thing for me, and here's why. And I'm gonna stick around, and if it's not now, it's next year,
Yeah. So there's the genuine and authentic enthusiasm and interest, and also being able to see something I heard you say, the value that person's going to bring, what they can do to help the company achieve its mission and goals.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's a better way of sort of like unpackaging what the word cloud that I offered up for that.
Well, one of the smartest things I've ever seen done here by an employer was a company, Carta, a company I worked at for a bit a few years ago. They published their pitch decks to the public, well after their rounds, obviously. But I think it did a lot to create alignment and prepare people for specifically that intangible, because I think what you're hinting at is they pitch the company to you as well or better than you've been pitching it to other people. Like, you hear yourself in them. And when I think about a good pitch, right, it's like, how would I pitch this business, and are they pitching it like to me the way I think I would pitch it, right?
Yeah.
So maybe there's something there. I'm not necessarily saying you should publish your deck.
I mean, I will say, and this is pretty bespoke to us, is that we have hired a number of people that were first users of our product. You know, like they subscribed their EV to our platform, and you know, just EVs, like cars in general, are like pretty emotional things, and you can get super passionate about your particular kind of car. That's the case with EVs, and not just Tesla drivers, but any of them. And so that passion is like really certainly helps. And so like every time we have an open roll, we post it to our customer mailing list. Like everybody who has their car on our platform gets a monthly battery report. And whenever we have an open roll, we post it to that, and we've hired several people off of that. So
I'll keep my eyes open.
Pretty specific to me. Well, you gotta have but you can't. Unfortunately, you can't subscribe your car. And it's like super. Now I'm like really mad at Nissan for another reason. Not just hurting my battery data, I'm hurting my recruiting prospects.
Yeah. Should we end our episode here with an apology to Nissan for the
Nissan makes great cars.
This episode was
brought to you by Nissan, it turns out, right? I believe they were your former sponsor.
Right. So apologize to the city of San Francisco, to Nissan.
We never really got into the dunking on San Francisco.
That'll have to be we'll have to do like a after hours conversations off careers, and we can have a round table. I'm sure there are plenty of people who would get in on that discussion in Seattle. All right, Scott. I really want to thank you for the time you took to speak with us today on Conversations on Careers and Professional Life.
Thanks for having me. It was really fun.
And that wraps up our conversation with Scott Case, co-founder and CEO of Recurrent. Jonathan, what stood out to you most from the second part of this interview?
Oh, so many things. I was particularly struck by Scott's advice for recent graduates looking to enter the clean technology space. His suggestion to gain experience at a large company before joining a startup really emphasizes the importance of understanding an industry well before innovating.
Absolutely. And I think his perspective on what he looks for when hiring at a startup is invaluable to our listeners. That combination of adaptability, willingness to take on different roles, and genuine passion for the company's mission is so crucial in those early stages.
Yep. I also loved his recommendations for niche podcasts and resources. Acquired's great. Can't say I'm going to queue up episodes of Car Dealership Guy anytime soon.
Same here, Jonathan. We hope you enjoyed this conversation on careers in climate tech with Scott Case. If you're considering a career in the clean technology or energy revolution, remember to stay curious, adaptable, and true to your passion.
And if you haven't already, be sure to check out the first part of our interview with Scott, where we discuss the work Recurrent is doing in the used electric vehicle market.
That's right. As always, thanks for listening to Conversations on Careers and Professional Life. You can find the first part of our conversation in the podcast feed or at conversationsoncareers.com. Thank you for listening to Conversations on Careers and Professional Life. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend or classmate. Help others find the show by leaving a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Conversations on Careers and Professional Life is produced by me, Gregory Heller, with support from the Foster School of Business Office of MBA Career Management. Learn more about the show, find show notes, and past episodes, and get in touch with me at conversationsoncareers.com. This episode was made possible in part with funding from Snowcap, a venture capital firm investing in early-stage platforms that directly and indirectly solve the climate crisis. Learn more at snowcap.vc. That's SNOCAP.vc.